This is practice question of pseudocode. This is the question. A teacher wants a program in which they can input all of the people's names and the grades from all the tests they have done. She wants the program to calculate the average for each student. The teacher will input all of the grades of one student before moving on to the next student. There are 20 students in her class and there are 20 tests in total. The grades range from A star to D. The program can display student and their grade before going to the next. First, we need to initialize the variables. So in this case, we have 5 variables: test, name, student, average, and count. Test represents the amount of tests you're doing, and we have 20 tests, so therefore we're going to need a loop, and therefore it's equal to a number. Same thing happens with the names, because there's 20 names that she needs to input, and that means there's 20 loops. The student represents the name that's going to be displayed. The average is their average in terms of letters, and con is required because we need to convert A star or the letters into numbers so that we can calculate the average and then back into letters. We cannot use one variable because we cannot overwrite a variable that's a letter into a number, so that's why we need 2 variables. Moving on. So as I said before, we have two for to next loop. One is names, one is test. So this is the first 3 lines of the coding after we initialize the variables. So we have the user inputs name and student is equal to name. We don't need to initialize name because name is always overwritten. It does not need to be saved. And con is equal to 0. And then we move on saying for test is equal to 1 to 20. And say user inputs grade. Then we go on to the case of statements. Instead of the case of statements, we could use if statements, but I decided to use case of statements. So this is one of the statements. So case grade of A star, con is equal to con plus 5. The better the number, better the grade, the larger the number. And then it goes to the next test and it loops back and it does this 20 times. As the teacher inputs 20 times, it goes to a certain number. And on the next one you can see that con is equal to con divided by 20, which means whatever the number is given is always divided by 20. So you calculate the average of the numbers, and the numbers represent the grade. And the second case of statement converts it back into grade. So we need to make sure that we have con between 2 numbers. We can't say a range because it can be a decimal and it can be point and maybe even, for example, 10 decimals. So we don't know how to get that far. So we can have equal to, greater or equal to, and less than. And then after all this, we say display student plus average. Student is the name that has been inputted, and the average is the average score. So then it goes to next names and then loops back. So this is an overview of the question and of the final answer that should be written. Thank you for watching.